I'm David Damore, the Executive Director of the Lindsay Institute in Brookings Mountain West. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Fireside Chat with Senator Richard Bryan, kicking off the campaign for the Bonnie and Richard Bryan Endowment in Public History. The Lindsay Institute, in partnership with the UNLV Foundation, the College of Liberal Arts, is thankful for the opportunity to co-host today's event. Thank you all for taking the time out of your schedules to join us, and I want to acknowledge all of the Senator's friends, former colleagues, and from throughout his career who've joined us today as well. The speakers who follow will provide information about the endowment and the Bryan's place in Nevada history, followed by a fireside chat with Senator Bryan and Michael Brown. As a student of the state's politics, I did want to offer some of my impressions on the Bryan's legacy. I moved to Nevada in August of 2000 to begin my career at UNLV. With Senator Bryan not seeking re-election that cycle, I was a constituent of his for only just a few months. Thus, much of what I learned about the senator initially stemmed from his role as Nevada's senior statesman, delivering the Nevada Yesterdays on segments on KNPR, serving on the state's Commission on Nuclear Projects, continuing the efforts he began in the U.S. Senate opposing Yucca Mountain, and his work preserving historical buildings and locations throughout Nevada. About a year and a half ago, I was invited by the University of Nevada Press to review a draft of My Life in Nevada Politics, the memoirs of Richard H. Bryan. Let's just say at 350 plus pages, I now know a whole lot more about the senator. 3 points in particular stand out. First, and most obviously, are the tremendous changes to Nevada and the policy challenges that the state's unprecedented growth created for its leaders. Over the course of Richard Bryan's distinguished career, Nevada evolved from a homogeneous and rurally oriented outpost to one of the most urbanized and demographically diverse states in the nation. For some context, in 1968, when he was first elected to the Assembly, Nevada's population was 464,000 people, with 55% of Nevadans living in Clark County. In his first legislative session, there was a total of 5 female legislators, but interestingly, 3 future U.S. senators, including the incumbent, who Bryan defeated in 1988, Chick Heck, and of course, Harry Reid. When Senator Bryan left office in 2001, there was nearly 1.5 million residents in Clark County and 2.1 million in the state. Second, as a leader who served in the legislature, as an attorney general, as governor, and then U.S. senator, and just one of 5 Nevadans ever to hold both the governorship and a seat in the U.S. Senate, Richard Bryan played key roles in navigating this transition. Here, Bryan's pragmatic leadership provided a steady hand that moved Nevada forward on so many fronts, including education, economic development, and social services. What comes through is that the qualities that Bryan embodies, forbearance, humility, and putting the interests of the state over those of his party and his own ambitions, are so desperately missing in today's politics. Lastly, the book makes clear that while Richard Bryan's name was on the ballot, his political successes were because of the partnership with Bonnie. The book is filled with anecdotes of how Bonnie smoothed over a rough edge or two, made the case for him in front of one constituency or another who might not have been sold on this candidacy, and how she served as the most trusted sounding board and political barometer. A truly remarkable relationship. A few acknowledgments and thank yous before we get started. Thank yous to our colleagues at UNLV TV who are recording this event. We will distribute the link to the recording and an event recap next week. Thank you to Emily Irwin at the Foundation, Robin Burke and Heather Torgensen with the College of Liberal Arts, and Ashley LeClaire and Caitlin Saladino with Lindsay for pulling this event together. Great job. Lastly, thank you to the donors, many of you are here today, who have seeded the endowment with your generous gifts. Next, to talk a little bit more about the endowment are Dr. James Nave, followed by Bill Hornbuckle.
Thank you very much. I really can't add much that's better than what was just said about Senator Bryan and Bonnie, and I certainly echo all of that. If I could, though, I might talk a little bit of personal words. Senator Bryan, I've been blessed to know him for many, many years. And I often say if I was to write a book, he'd get several chapters in it because he's been that much a part of my life, and I cherish that part of my life. He is the most honorable and ethical person I've ever known. And I didn't say politician, I said person, and stuff. And I remember one time I was talking to somebody, I won't say who, because all you would know and all we love, he's not with us now. And I was talking about another politician, and I said maybe something that his ethics could be a little bit better or something like that. And this guy said, Jim, your problem is you have a guideline that you judge every politician's ethics by Richard Bryan. And I thought, well, what's wrong with that? But then over the years, I realized that wasn't good because nobody would meet that, but I feel that way sincerely about him. I try to have dinner with him once a month. It's one of the more enjoyable nights of the month for me each year, and we have a great time. And half or more of the time, Robert Lewis joins us, and it's certainly, I think, a highlight for me at least, and I know it is for Robert, and I hope it is for Senator Bryan. But you always learn so much from him. And if you're taking a trip, say overseas or anywhere, if you really don't have time to do the homework for the trip, all you have to do is mention where you're going, and you got it, and stuff, I remember I was going to Hamburg, Germany one time to a World Veteran Association meeting, and I mentioned it, and an hour later I knew everything about that, and stuff, and Senator Bryan, we're probably out of luck now, but Robert and I used to say, I'd say, now Robert, if you don't know quite ready for where you're going to go, because Robert travels a lot more than I do, I said, just mention it to Senator Bryan, and you got it, and stuff like that. But also, it was mentioned about history. It is unbelievable what I know about Nevada history, only because of Senator Bryan, and stuff. And he's just such a knowledgeable person, and he's so smart and so brilliant, but so kind, and stuff. But yet, to him, the really important things are what's important. We had dinner a couple weeks ago, and what was important to him was 3 grad school graduations this month, And I know there was a big event at the MGM last week. I know he was invited, but he was at a grad school graduation, and stuff. And he is so proud of all 3 of his children. They're all wonderful, wonderful people, but all of his grandkids too, and stuff. And to me, that's what's really important. I was really impressed with him when he retired from the United States Senate. He wanted to go out on top. There was 5 or 6 reasons why he quit. I'm not going to go into that. But one of them was he wanted to be close to his friends that he had at high school. And he didn't feel that in Washington that he was quite as part of those Friday night dinners and stuff like that. And that was really, really important to him and stuff. That was just one of many reasons he quit, but that was that. I often tell the story that he and I were pretty close at that time, and the night before he announced his retirement, he called me about 10 o'clock at night, and he says, can you be down at Las Vegas High School tomorrow morning, I think at 9 o'clock. I'm going to announce that I am not going to run for re-election. And I said, okay. And I thought later, he waited till 10 o'clock. I was involved in boxing a lot in those days. And I know when the press closes and stuff closes. And I thought, I know he trusts me totally, but he does know the press is closed, and stuff, And the first time I really had a serious talk with him, before I got him, was when he was getting ready to run for governor. And Dick Scott, a retired, now deceased veterinarian, Frank Scott's son, one of them wanted us to talk about this gubernatorial campaign. And I told him, I said, I'm not for sure. I'm thinking about suing you. He was Attorney General then. And he said, why? And I told him all the bad things that the state board was doing to hurt pets in this state. He listened to me, and he says, that's really, really bad for the pets, but it's really bad for the citizens. And he immediately pushed a law through that changed everything, that's helped millions of pets since then. Still revolutionary in this country. I think we're still the only state that's got it. And when he did that, I knew, he said, I'm going to help the pets and I want to help the people. I said, then I want to help him, And it grew from there to what he has done to affect my world in so many different ways. We became close. We talked, I don't know, maybe more than once a day. I think one time he called me 11 times from San Francisco talking about problems in boxing, and Bonnie still tells us about that when she was alive. But I learned so much from him about everything about things. But the most important thing is I cherish his honesty. I cherish his friendship. I cherish his integrity and stuff. And he tried to handle everything correct. He tried to handle the move from the governor's office to the Senate. He tried to handle his retirement correct from that. But he got Bonnie, who I would never say she was better this or that than anybody else, because there's a lot of great people. But let's just say I don't have words enough to describe how great she was. Senator Bryan ran many campaigns, but the best one he ran was for student body president of UNR, because not for that, he wouldn't have had Bonnie. He felt it would help his campaign if he dated a shorty girl. So he won the election, but he won the bigger prize. He won the life's gift, And Bonnie was always supportive. She always was kind to him, and she loved being, a politician's wife. I remember one time, he hadn't been governor that long, and there still was, the people like him, they don't like him. And either I called Bonnie or Bonnie called me, and she was at the mansion, and I'm assuming it's about her dog. And then when we got through, she started just talking. How are people receiving Senator Bryan? She said, Richard, I think he said Dick, down there. And I said, I think people are really, really liking him. I said, Bonnie, right now, as far as I know, the only person in the state that could beat him if he ran for election today would be you. And she says, well, after this morning, I just may do that, and stuff. So it must have been a difficult morning. But the times and the dinners we spent with Bonnie, I cannot tell you how much respect she had. I always felt that she should have been put on the UNLV Board of Regents, that she would have been wonderful at that. Her heart was as strong, as good as it could be, beyond great mother, great grandmother. I just don't have words to describe how much it did. But in my world, Richard and Bonnie Bryan are just the top. Any honor, any recognition, any one of them get, they deserve that and more. And anything that I can do to help make that happen, I will. I will say that he is a great lover of red wine, and we always try to make sure we have a nice toast each meal. And so I hope I've said enough on that, and I hope I haven't been anything bad, Richard, because I do truly love you and respect you so much. I'm going to introduce Bill Hornbuckle, who I have great respect for also. As he is, first of all, I think is unbelievable and great. He's a UNLV graduate, and to go on and lead the company that he's now leading, which I have such respect for, and stuff. And over the years, I would see him get promoted here, get there. I remember one time, my dear friend Richard Steele he got promoted to something, and Richard says, "Oh yeah, we worked together at the Landmark," and I never forgot that. And Richard and I would often talk. The one thing that was common about Bill Hornbuckle was he's so smart, he's so intelligent. That's what Richard told me. Over the years, I got a little bit closer to the MGM, a little bit, as you know, and with boxing and with after I went off the athletic commission. I probably talked to Richard Sturm every day about different things, and every time you'd get a promotion or something or move up, particularly when you move to the number 2 spot, I don't know how many times Richard Sturm has told me he's the smartest, most intelligent person I've ever met, and also a really, really nice person, and stuff. So I was always, from a distance, a cheerleader for you. And then when it came time that the number 1 spot was open, and they announced they were going to have a worldwide search for a Fortune 500 person, I thought, ooh, and stuff. Then they named you permanent CEO and president.
Look what happened.
No, and my thought was, that's a smart board, And so it's my pleasure to introduce you, and I want you to know that I have such respect for your company. I often say when they're talking about the history of Las Vegas that, in my opinion, Howard Hughes and Kirk Kerkorian are at the top of the list of making it what it is today. So anyway, I'll turn it over to you now, Bill. Thank you, sir. Oh, that's okay.
Let's get ready to rumble. No, wait a minute, it's something different. So first and foremost, thank you. I'm going to retire at some point. You can come to my retirement as well. He'll go on forever. I love it. So just a couple comments. Senator, you may not recall this, but the first time I think we actually met was in the late 80s. It was like 1987-ish. And my then boss, Steve Wynn, had hatched the idea of the Mirage. And if you thought about, and you remember history of Las Vegas, and many of you do, the Mirage was this dream that was 4 times bigger, 4 times more, 4 times everything. And everyone thought we were crazy. I thought we were crazy, by the way. You didn't. And that meeting, I remember this, you were encouraging, you were respectful, you were supportive. And so, as it was mentioned, I am a product of UNLV. I came here in '77 when there was 300,000 people. We all know what it has turned into. And I feel like I'm a product of not only this institution, but of Las Vegas and of Nevada. And for that, I am, for you, eternally thankful. So thank you for that very much. In our organization, we have the pleasure and the responsibility and the goodwill to support like 55,000 employees. By the way, we're a minority-majority employer, of which Jyoti women 49.3%. 1,200 of them are UNLV graduates. We just graduated this year, 63 of them. By the way, this is a little scary. Men, we have to think about this, of which 72% are women. Kind of speaks to some others. Yes. And so the organization, frankly, is hell-bent on making sure women have the right place inside hospitality, inside this community, inside leadership. Jyoti Chopra is our Chief People Officer, who is with us tonight, is helping drive that initiative. And there wasn't a better, more appropriate moment than this one to help to support, particularly on behalf of yours and Bonnie's name, what's being accomplished here tonight and ultimately through the university. So we're pleased and happy to give the first 100,000 donation into the foundation, into the cause. So you're welcome. And for everyone who's here, I couldn't be more proud of what's been accomplished by this university, where it's going, where it's been. And there is still an amazing, bright future for Nevada, particularly Southern Nevada. And we hope to lead part of this into the next level. But because of you and people like you, but particularly because you were the best governor, don't tell any of the other governors are not here. But it was a really productive and amazing time in Nevada history. So thank you for that. And we're pleased to help. So thank you.
They also mic'd me, so I'll put this down. And as a professor, I'll go to the lectern. My name is Michael Green. I'm the chair of the history department, and I write the scripts for Nevada Yesterdays. I wrote a script for tonight, and I feel like Senator Bryan should read it. That's what we do. But I want to thank you all for coming for this very special occasion honoring very special people, Bonnie and Richard Bryan. My pleasant duty is to talk about how they fit into Nevada's history. The chair that we are working on creating includes the couple of fields. One is public history, or history that goes beyond the classroom to reach the general public. The other is women's history, or gender history. And that makes honoring them in this way even more appropriate because of what they have done in those areas and for all of us. So I will recite some history and probably repeat everything Dr. Nave said. Bonnie Fairchild was born in Lodi and went to the University of Nevada in Reno. There she met a student running for student body president. His campaign manager was Jim Joyce, later to become a legendary Nevada figure in his own right as a political consultant and advertising executive. Someone in that campaign, and I don't know who wants to take the credit, thought it might help the candidate to date someone from the Kappa Alpha Theta sorority. Richard Bryan asked out Bonnie Fairchild. The rest really is history. They got married on September 1st, 1962, and were married just short of 54 years. She said later, as he entered politics, that it was a package deal. When you elected him, you got the whole family, which eventually included daughters Leslie and Blair and son Richard Jr. Las Vegas was and is in Richard Bryan's blood and bones. He was born in Washington, D.C., but he won't claim that. He really is a lifelong Las Vegan. His father, Oscar, was from Las Vegas. He was back east getting his law degree and working for the federal government, one of many Nevadans to do that through patronage from their member of Congress. In this case, James Scrugham, who became the only Nevadan to serve as a member of both houses of Congress and as governor. Richard Bryan would go on to be the only Nevadan to be state attorney general, governor, and U.S. senator. There is someone else who has chosen to be attorney general, governor, and president of a university. For Senator Bryan's sake, we're glad he didn't do that. It's a terrible fate. He grew up in Las Vegas in a home in the Huntridge section, went to school here, met another 8-year-old named Jack Binion, who had just moved here and told me once, I moved here and there was Dick Bryan already running for governor. First, though, he won some school elections, graduated from the university, did his time in the reserves, attended law school at the Hastings College of Law, and passed the Nevada bar in 1963, taking the exam at the same time as another young political aspirant named Harry Reid. They would become known as the Gold Dust Twins as they rose through the ranks. Richard Bryan worked in the district attorney's office, then as the first Clark County public defender, thanks to a Ford Foundation grant and the support of District Court Judge John Mowbray. He won his first assembly race in 1968, moved up to the state senate in 72, was elected attorney general in 78. In 82, he was elected governor and re-elected easily in 1986 after a primary challenge from a distant cousin of mine. I think he might have forgiven me for that. Throughout his career in state office, Richard Bryan supported strong gaming regulation, economic diversification, and promotion of tourism statewide. As Attorney General, he had the ultimate responsibility for the state's legal fight against organized crime, the kinds of things you may have seen in the movie Casino, and more, and worse. He already had helped write and pass legislation to enhance the powers of the Gaming Control Board and its legal advisors in the Attorney General's office. He continued in the tradition of the first governor for whom he voted at age 21 in his first general election, Grant Sawyer, who told his regulators to hang tough. He had something else in common with Sawyer, besides being a great governor. Sawyer said of him that he was almost as frantic as I was when he was governor. If something was happening in Nevada when he was governor, Richard Bryan was there. It might be a high school graduation in Jackpot. You can find it on the map. A park dedication in Humboldt County, a group of cowboys in Battle Mountain, or a black tie dinner in Las Vegas and Reno. Almost every Nevadan knew their governor. If you needed a fourth for bridge, he'd probably show up. He also had in common with Sawyer a belief in civil rights, which led Bryan to issue the executive order declaring Martin Luther King's birthday a holiday in Nevada. They also knew he would fight for them. Sawyer said of him, echoing Dr. Nave, he's an absolutely straight shooter who never lies, and he's a man of total integrity. If he says he's going to do something, he does it, and he wouldn't accept a questionable dime even if he were penniless. During his governorship, the federal government took steps to make Yucca Mountain the nation's first high-level nuclear waste repository. Bryan created the State Office of Nuclear Projects to fight it and used every means possible throughout his career to keep nuclear waste out of Nevada.
Yay.
Bonnie Bryan was part of those fights and that life. As Nevada's First Lady, she too was everywhere, all at once. She involved herself in Nevada communities while living in the governor's mansion, where she oversaw the first renovation in many years. She invited a lot of women's groups to visit the mansion. There's a feeling she just might have been up to something politically in doing that. She started a safe ride program to make sure that the teenagers who had been drinking, they're not supposed to do that, would get home safely. She started the Brown Bag program to enable senior citizens to get the right information from pharmacists about their prescriptions. She helped start Reno's version of the Susan G. Komen Race for the Cure for Breast Cancer. She served on more boards than it may be possible to count. In 1988, the Bryans' lives changed. He ran for the U.S. Senate and won the first of 2 terms. In the Senate, he focused on fighting nuclear waste at Yucca Mountain. He chaired the Senate Ethics Committee, which was not his idea of fun, but he took it seriously and helped clean up some serious problems in that body. They need him back. I should note, he has spoken to my classes, and at the end, the students always say, "Is he going to run again?" We'll vote for him. He fought for CAFE standards, or corporate average fuel economy. Not with a lot of legislative success, he'd say, but he is part of the history of advances that have led us to hybrids, electric vehicles, and a lot better environment. He served on the Senate Intelligence Committee, requiring him to work on important measures that he still will not discuss, darn it. He also co-sponsored and drove to passage the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act, which has enabled the Bureau of Land Management to sell public land in the Las Vegas area, but with the revenue directed to conservation projects. Then, virtually assured of winning a 3rd term in 2000, the Bryans came home. He retired from the Senate, continued to do some work in Washington in his new job as an attorney, but the Bryans were now going to be firmly ensconced in Nevada, yet their passion for public service never waned. And that brings us to some important connections between the Bryans, UNLV, and this proposed chair. The Bryans have been great believers in and supporters of historic preservation. As a senator, not only did he promote conservation, but he also worked to save Lake Tahoe and other historic and environmental jewels around Nevada. Upon returning to Nevada, he was a founder of Preserve Nevada, the state's oldest statewide historic preservation organization, and after 2 decades, still the only person to chair its board. In that position, he has helped with advocacy and advice, publicly and privately, to save Nevada's history. And I'd note my predecessor as chair and as director of Preserve Nevada, Andy Kirk, is here, and it was Andy who said a few years ago, we got to do something to honor him. So if the ball began rolling, it was with Andy. Toward that end, Senator Bryan has long served on the City of Las Vegas Centennial Commission and was a board member with Nevada Humanities. He also has been a valuable historical resource since he remembers everything and everybody. In that spirit, he once introduced me to someone and was talking about me, and I thought, did I do that? And I went home and checked my resume. I'd forgotten. I had done it. He remembered. Bonnie Bryan also played a crucial role in historic preservation. As a member of the Junior League, she was a key figure in the effort to save the Morelli House, the mid-century modern house that is now just footsteps from where her husband went to high school, as did Linda Givens, who made sure he got here tonight. It is also the home of the Junior League. This chair will also study women and their history. And there, too, the Bryans have been an important part of our history. Bonnie Bryan's efforts have helped women, yes, but also reflect a long tradition of women's activism in our state's politics on behalf of the causes and changes that have made this a better place to live. For his part, Senator Bryan would say that he well understood good old boys, but he was determined to show that women should be in charge. His chiefs of staff and top advisors were women: Marlene Lockhart, Lou Gamage, Jenny DeVoe Oaks, and Jean Marie Neal, to name only a few. He appointed the first woman to the Gaming Control Board. By the end of his term as governor, he had appointed 35 women to major state policy positions and several hundred to state boards and commissions. In the 1970s, he supported the ERA and equalized minimum wages for men and women, and passed a bill requiring that for conveyances and mortgages of community property, husbands weren't the only ones who had to sign it. He sponsored the first Governor's Conference for Women and defended the morals of Nevada women, earning himself a roasting from Johnny Carson. I'll also take a personal moment to say that not only have I had the pleasure and privilege of working with the senator on Nevada Yesterdays for the past 2 decades, getting to know Bonnie Bryan through the Morelli House and other ways, but even including a dinner with them in which I learned that the senator and I are fellow chalkaholics, which is the most important thing. Indeed, my association with them has been a great privilege, and the Bryans have felt privileged to be part of Nevada, but Nevada has been privileged to have and cherish them. Senator Bryan called Bonnie his Rock of Gibraltar. For decades, the Bryans have been Nevada's Rocks of Gibraltar, and we thank them as we thank you for coming and supporting this effort. It's my pleasure now to welcome Senator Bryan and Michael Brown for a discussion of, well, whatever comes up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Michael. Good job. Thank you. Senator?
Thank you. Before we begin, I have to make a wardrobe change.
They said...
Wait, I'm not finished.
Okay.
I'm not finished. I want to be like you. I'll see if I know how to put it on. Well, somebody probably has to help me, but the spirit is there.
Yeah, it's very...
We've got some of it on, huh?
There you go. You're good.
Okay, good.
They said that interviewing you would be very easy because I just need to ask one question and then just watch the clock. But thank you, Senator.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You know, we've known each other since I met you in '95.
Yep.
After you were reelected, and I just joined Barrick. And
Yep.
it's just such a pleasure. And, you know, one of the things that I learned early on is that when you ran a Washington office and you had to take your CEO around, always start with Richard Bryan because he'll say such great things to your CEO about you that it'll start the whole day
Thank
off
you.
well.
Yep.
So, well, you know, not only we have you here this evening, we have all these wonderful people, this incredible history of the state. And we've heard your public offices, Attorney General, Governor, Senator. Did you have a favorite? What did you enjoy the most? What did you find the most enriching?
Well, Michael, I always wanted to be governor. My dad was in public life, and some of you have heard this, but he always would tell me that every citizen in the community needs to give back something to that community, and he described it as paying your civic rent. And by that he said, you know, you don't have to be in public life. You can be working with the Girl Scouts, Humane Society, but contribute. And that resonated with me. The town was small then, maybe 15, 20,000 people. My dad was a lawyer, and I'd be downtown once in a great while, and people would come up to him, and he seemed to have an answer. God only knows whether he did, but he seemed to. And I thought, you know, I think I'd like to be like that. So that being governor was really my dream as a kid, and I was lucky enough, thanks to many of the people in this room, to have lived that dream.
You are elected governor in one of the deepest recessions that the nation had ever faced. The economy, you know, no one really knew at that point which direction it was going.
Yeah.
I've had the chance to go into special collections and see the papers from your administration, see many of the people that are in this room tonight in those papers. You set the state on developing its gaming industry, creating a tourism commission. Thanks to Mr. Hornbuckle, I now understand this missing piece of you saw the need to take us out of the Rat Pack era into the resort era. You create a diversification effort. You're really Nevada's first modern management governor. Did you envision that the state would move so far?
Well, you know, circumstances, they say, can make the person, and I was not fortunate that we were in deep recession, but that made it possible to do a few things. you had to make a lot of cutbacks, and that was very, very painful. It really was. And but you know, I was from Las Vegas, and I think it's no secret to many of the Las Vegas old-timers that, now, who was this crazy guy from Las Vegas, this liberal guy that, what the hell is he going to do to the state? So there was some real concern. I had been helped as Attorney General because in those days, the Attorney General, the Governor, and the State Controller sat on the State Highway Board. We set the priorities. You know, we were on the State Board of Examiners. And so I had an opportunity to get to know those people and maybe say, you know, he's not as big a danger as we thought he would be. You know, really, yeah, he may be okay to work with. I was helped by the fact that the recession hurt, and it hurt badly, and so there was a sense we've got to do more. Now, I certainly wasn't the first governor to work on economic diversification. Governor Sawyer went to wearing cowboy hats and singing songs and that sort of thing. He was heavily criticized. He was called Gallivanting Grant. And I remember that those days. But basically, you know, I said, I'm with you. He said, you will? You'll come with us? I said I would. And I think that helped the state, and no question about it, we got a break. You know, within a year, things had turned around, and, you know, the 85 session was a much better session when the economy had recovered a great deal. But it was the good staffers. Marlene Lockhart has been the Dragon Lady, as I called her. I mean, it's still amazing that she can walk. She took more hits from me. You know, if something didn't go well, it was always, Marlene must have made him do it. Yeah. So I appreciate it. But I recognize, too, that Marlene represented a lot of women that my wife made me aware of, that not all of them had college degrees or masters or PhD, but they were talented. And she encouraged me to give those women an opportunity. They did an extraordinary job for me, just an extraordinary job, and I gave them the opportunity. I remember when I asked Marlene to serve as my representative in the state legislature, my supporters said, "Are you crazy? Floyd Lamb and Carl Dodge and those people, they're not going to talk to her." Well, I said, give her a chance. And it was initially, there was some tough going, but she made it. When Patty Becker was appointed by me as the first woman to actually serve on the Gaming Control Board, you know, there were some people that were really apprehensive about that. I remember taking her around to Bill's predecessor and introducing her, and then most of you old-timers will remember the Rebel Games, Gucci-Ro. You know, everybody there, you know, either was influential or thought they were influential. And I made it very important. Yeah, I made it very important to be seen with Patty Becker at that. These women, and so many, Rita Myers here tonight, she worked on my staff, Amy Ayub and others I'm sure that I've missed, but they made it possible. Yeah. The Bill Bibles in the world, an incredibly gifted person. He became my first appointment as budget director. So able, so smart, talking about ethics and integrity, appointing Paul Bible as chairman of the Gaming Commission. I mean, he navigated some of these very difficult political issues.
Well, ethics, common denominator through your career.
We've got Mike Hornbuckle here. Mike was a terrific member of my staff as Attorney General, and later had another appointment, Mike, as I recall. Yes, yeah. Did a great job. So it was the people that helped me so much, and not being afraid to appoint people that were a lot smarter than I was. And that wasn't that difficult, by the way. And making sure that they got credit for it. I think it helped me a lot.
Yeah. So Bonnie Bryan, tell me when you first met her. What was that moment? Did she know this was going to be her life?
It would have been 1957. She'd graduated from Lodi High School. And each year at the University of Nevada, Reno at that time, a lot of the really cute gals came up from California. Now, I know I can't say it. I'm being broadcast, so let the world know what happened. And so we always refer to those girls as the California crop. And So I had seen her around campus, didn't know anything about it. I was in ATO, Alpha Tau Omega fraternity, and we had been very, very close to the Tridel house. Jim Joyce was engaged, married. Predecessor, Bob Lewis, had married at Tridel. The predecessor before him was. So the Theta was a great house, and they were kind of, wait a minute, give us a break. And so it was decided that I should take a Theta pledge to a dance that was hosted by the Phi Sigs. So Joyce said, you should take a Theta pledge to the dance. I said, well, get me a list. Yeah, let's take a look. It's very, very romantic. It was very romantic. So Bonnie Fairchild. Yeah. Some of you really old timers will remember when the DC-3s were replaced by, I think it was the F-127 or something, you know, and it was called the Fairchild. I said, from California, she might be an airline heiress. Let's ask her. That was not true, but she was the dairyman's daughter, and she was the best thing that ever happened to me. She helped me win that race. She struggled as some of my romantic. I always thought that Nevada, north of Tonopah, I could have one girlfriend, and south I could have another. That was pretty naive, you know. It didn't quite work out that way. So anyway, we got together, and she was by far the best thing that could have happened to me.
She seemed, and she enjoyed it.
She loved it.
She loved it.
She did not want me to leave. In 2000, I wanted to leave for a couple of reasons. Number one, I was missing our old friends. Some of them were here. Their lives were moving on. Every Saturday and Sunday, I had appointments all day, and I was missing them. I'm not a golfer, but when my kids were growing up, I missed a lot. Mm-hmm. You know, I wasn't the worst dad, but I certainly wasn't the best, and the grandkids were coming, and so I thought I might get a mulligan here to do some things with them I couldn't do with my own kids. My father had died at 52. I was in good health. I continue to be in good health, and so I thought, you know, it's time to leave, and maybe to leave at the top of your game is not a bad thing. And so Bonnie wanted to stay, but she was always great in saying, look, if that's what you want to do, count me in. Mm-hmm.
Your service in the Senate, you supported President Bush in the Gulf War?
Yep.
You pursued the CAFE standards?
Yeah.
You were a legislator making things happen, the grease that kept wheels turning in the Senate. But you also protected the institution. Ethics have always been a common denominator from your days as public defender. I mean, that could not have endeared you to some of your colleagues there.
Well, let me tell you, nobody wants to serve on the Ethics Commission. I mean, you know, investigating your colleagues. So what had happened is I got appointed to the commission. I was the junior, 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and I was the junior Democrat, and I was very happy about that. Terry Sanford, who was the chairman, got defeated. Okay, so I'm moving up one lot. So the next in line was Jeff Bingaman, who was up in 94, and he persuaded the majority leader to let him leave. All of a sudden, it's me. Yeah. I don't want this. I don't want this. And Jean Neal, another one of the outstanding staffers I had, you know, said, you got to do it. And you know, the rule at that time was you got to wait for a complaint before you can activate. No formal complaint, but many women were coming forward and saying that Senator Packwood had made inappropriate moves for him. So Jean was on my case pretty good. You got to do something. So we started the investigation. One of the extraordinary things, the investigation went on for several years. There was no leak from the committee.
That's right.
That is I don't know how it happened. And no leak was obviously a positive thing, but also nobody knew what the hell we were doing. and so even in the Democratic caucus, where Packwood had a lot of friends, when are you guys going to do something, you know? And so finally it worked out, and Packwood fought tooth and nail. And ultimately, he had this book that he dictated, a diary. let me tell you, the diary would be X-rated. I mean, I don't know why he dictated this every night. We didn't even know it existed, but there was some gal that complained in California somewhere that Pat Quinn had made untoward, and so his lawyer, he may not have known what was in the book, said, well, we can dispute that. We can prove that he was in Maine on some kind of a political event. Well, okay, let's take a look at that. So he didn't want to give it up initially, gave it up, and a guy that, Kenneth Starr, somebody will remember him. So we appointed Ken Starr as an individual who was kind of, would take a look at everything and tell us, you can get this or you can't get that. Ken Starr gave us everything we asked for, got to know him pretty well. Later, many of you will recall, he took the lead in the House and carried over to the Senate to impeach President Clinton. But he was a very nice guy, and I got along with him very well. And years later, when Leslie, my daughter, was admitted to the Supreme Court, he was there that morning. And Starr had been, a solicitor, and so he knew all the people, took my daughter around. Doesn't take much to generate some real enthusiasm and appreciation. And, still small world. None of this polarization that we have today. Michael, I mean, there's no exaggeration on that. Please, I don't want to talk to you.
I was going to say, so you start running for governor at 8 years old, and you get reelected. So you're starting a second term, and then you run for the Senate, and you're leaving the dream job. What was the calculus there?
Well, my 86, excuse me, was a very good year. I carried every county.
Yeah.
That Bonnie was terrific. She loved being out on the hustings, and
you carried Elko County.
Huh?
You carried Elko County.
Yes, really. Well, in those days, conservative Democrats could be elected in rural Nevada. That would not happen today. But anyway, so the nuclear waste issue, I was the first to publicly announce among the state elected officials shortly after I was elected in '83 that we were going to oppose the high-level nuclear waste dump. The DOE brought kind of a dog and pony show to Las Vegas here on this campus, and so my opponent in the '88 race, Chick Heck, I didn't know I was going to run. I didn't want to run. Reed was pressing me. Bob Graham, who just passed away recently, and I'd known him as governor. Chuck Robb, Lyndon Johnson's son-in-law, he was governor of Virginia. I'd known him. And he was going to be in the Senate if he was elected, Chuck Robb. And then I met another guy by the name of Joe Lieberman, who I really got to enjoy. And so went back to this Piney Point thing, and I decided to run. And we had a spirited race, ran against Chick Hague. Let me be clear, a very decent person, a good person, and we'd known each other in the state legislature, and we traveled back and forth between Las Vegas and Reno, but Chick was not going to be a warrior against the nuclear waste issue, and that's what kind of drove
Nevada ahead of your own political career.
Reed was a freshman senator, and he had led the fight in the Senate, and later, as you know, he amassed great seniority and very powerful. Yeah. Whether you love Harry Reid or hate him, and boy, there's a lot on each side of that, he did a lot for Nevada. Yeah. He had a lot of clout when he was on the Appropriations Committee, and as Majority Leader, he's the guy that set the time for the trains to run. So he did a lot, but Harry and I love retail politics.
Yes.
I appeared in several parades in which there were only 4 cars, mine one of them. In fact, we went around 3 or 4 times.
You may have been the last retail politician in modern Nevada politics.
And Bonnie did too.
Bonnie did too. Is it true that after you left the Senate, you continued to go to the county fairs?
I went to a lot of them, not all of them, but I went to a lot of them. Yeah. I never ever missed. If I made a commitment, I never missed that. And I recall, so it's the '84 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, and I had tickets for the closing event. Bonnie wanted to go, I wanted to go, but I made a commitment to the State Realtors Association to install their offices in Elko. We went to Elko.
You went to Elko.
Elko, yeah.
You know, we have some students in the room tonight, and you know, you're UNR campus, and this beautiful statue of you up there. And what I like about that statue is it shows the students the potential, because of the benches with each of the office, that, you know, that they could someday kind of repeat that circle of success. If we had a time machine and you went back to UNR campus and bumped into the younger Richard Bryan,
Yes.
what advice would you give him?
Well, the times are so different. The one thing I talked with a person tonight, you know, whatever job you have, burn no bridges. Burn no bridges. You never know. Michael knows what I'm talking about, that there's some people that, to be candid, within the bosom of the lodge here, I know, unlike Las Vegas, but what happened there stays. Stays there. That I wasn't particularly impressed. Later, they had very senior positions, you know, and they were very helpful to me. I think the other thing is, you know, we all have defeats. My defeats are longer than my victories. I ran for student council at Las Vegas High School. I voted for my opponent. Big mistake. He beat me by 1. So life is a learning experience. I ran against him for freshman class president, and I lost. And I ran for sophomore class president, and Clyde Turner ran against me, a good guy. Some of you know Clyde. And I needed to broaden my base. So I suggested to Johnny Demon, football star from St. Joseph, I said, let's run as a team. I won by 1 vote. I lost for student body president. And I had all, Kenny Gregson is here tonight. You know, I had the athletes, because I couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time, but I wanted to be a student manager. They got the same letter sweater that the All-State guy. So I wore that even when the temperature rose to 90 degrees. I mean, I was there with my letter sweater. And so I got to know Kenny and all those guys. So the athletes were for me the good-looking girl. Tony Rosenbaum, a very capable guy, later became a professor. He worked the freshman and sophomore. That's where Linda Givens was a freshman in high school the following year. And so I learned, you know, there are more of them. So I ran for the University of Nevada student president. I went to every independent dorm on campus. More of them than the movers and shakers, and I was successful. And, you know, I ran a couple of other times and lost. But I think the lesson there is don't get so down on yourself. You know, Theodore Roosevelt, and that he's quoted in the book. I mean, look, get into the arena. You know, yes, you get bloody and marred, but the triumph of victory is energizing, transforming, and yes, your place will never be a place in life that never tried to do anything and was unsuccessful. Yeah, so. That's part of the lesson.
I've always wondered, which lodge is this, by the way, that you always...
This is the lodge of Bryan's supporters tonight.
Yes, it is.
My favorite lodge. It didn't meet all the time, let me put it that
I
way.
understand.
But you know, part of the thing too is civility, and I know I don't need to lecture to people of my age group. I mean, civility was the accepted thing. My mother was from the South, very polite. I have to tell you this, the mothers loved me. Well, the girls wouldn't give me a tumble. Why don't you like that nice young man? I had zero going for me with them, but no, civility. We could sit down and talk to people. I'm not a product of the digital age. I struggle. Right now, I've got a problem with my computer. Have no idea what the devil the problem is, but I'll find somebody that does. But I think the one thing we lose in the digital age is how to talk to people.
Yes.
You know, how to converse, to talk, to understand, not just send emails. And I think that's unfortunate. So that's something else I think is important for people to do. And, you know, you're not running against people because they're your enemy. You just have a different political philosophy, a different point of view, think you can do something better. I ran against Bob List once for Attorney General, got beat fair and square, 700 votes. He came to me for help. I was in the state Senate and the Judiciary Committee and needed something. And Mike, I said, yeah, Bob will do it. I beat him for governor. He came in and said, I've got a client, bring him on in, we'll talk. That doesn't happen that much anymore, but I think it's a better place if we do that.
It certainly was a better place.
Yeah.
It certainly was. You could have stayed in D.C.
A big win.
You could have stayed in D.C.
I may have.
President
Yeah,
Clinton
I may
was
have.
there.
Yeah.
You could have. A lot of senators. You're 62. You've decided
Yeah.
to step down 2 terms. You could have joined a lobbying firm there or gone off, been an ambassador. You really did come home. You know, and as a
Well, I did that.
Washingtonian, that's very. I saw that rarely.
Yeah, I did that. You know, if we just talked about that earlier, but you know, I'd had a good run.
Yeah.
You know, I'd always wanted to be governor. That was something I strived for from the time I was in grade school. And then, you know, the Senate was kind of the frosting on the cake. I really hadn't planned on that. But I enjoyed that time back there. I really did. I spent the first 3 or 4 years of my life when my dad was finishing law school. And so I met some of the people who lived in D.C., and I said, I went to nursery school there. The Grasshopper Green. This gal said, well, so did I. But she had to be at least 25, 30 years younger than I.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the city. It's a beautiful city. I wish every high school student in America could go there and see what a great country we have, and the people who are responsible, Democrats and Republicans, of making this such a great country. We have every right to criticize our country, and I take strong exception to people say, well, if you criticize the country, you don't love it. That's not true. Maybe you love it even more, but it's an absolutely, we're blessed in so many ways to have this great country. Yeah. Imperfect, absolutely, and so are each of us. But I love my time in D.C. and spent a lot of time at the memorials and things like that. The sort of thing that I love.
I remember the Democratic convention in New York. You talked to one of your staffers, and I said, so where's the senator? And they said, well, he's on the infrastructure tour of New York City.
Yes.
You were traveling around looking
I don't think it was Bonnie's for. I went on a tour of the subway.
Yes.
She said, but there's a play. I want to see the subway system.
A little known story, but before you left the Senate, you called me up and you said, I need you and Tony Sanchez. We have to buy a cemetery marker. And I was like, what? And he says, because you had discovered that Nevada's first congressman was buried in the Congressional Cemetery without a headstone.
No, yeah.
And so we went off and we raised the money, and then all of us traipsed out to the Congressional Cemetery one day and dedicated that. And I thought, what a reverence for history that you have. Now we have this history project launching here. What would you like to see? How would you like to see this measure of success as we embark on this?
Well, you know, I was interested in history, and the editor, publisher of the Fallon Lahontan Valley News had done a lot of research. I'll be honest with you, I never heard of the guy. But he was a mover and shaker. Yeah. Lincoln needed his help to ratify the 13th Amendment. He only served one term.
One term.
And then he moved on and tried to get appointed as a United States Senator. Nebraska came into the Union in 1867. And by golly, he was, in those days, they were called ministers. Today, they're ambassadors to a couple of South American countries. And he died, you know, in the 20th century, having, you know, accomplished a lot, but obscure as far as Nevada was concerned. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to launch on this project here, and you know, we have so much history in the room tonight, folks that are with us. You know, the impact that you've had on Nevada. You know, when you came in the process, we were 49th in population. Now we're 33rd, and yet you're still influencing
What was
the
easier
state.
then?
Yeah,
The competition's probably much tougher today.
Yeah. But you have so many folks in this room that are continuing to push the state
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. It's such a great state, God. Yeah. And I do miss the campaign trail, I have to say that. I really do, yeah. I like to get out there and shake.
Any campaign trail you want to tell us?
Yeah, you know, you never get that out of the system, you know. And but the one thing that was so engaging about Bonnie, you've said it, and Michael has said it, and Jim has said it, she was so unaffected. You know, she would, you know, be at many different events and people are hovering around you, take a photo with you or something, and she could see people hanging back. Maybe they'd never do an event. She always went out and reached out to them and said, come on, and, you know, that type of thing. She really cared a lot. At the time I was governor, with the two exceptions, the MAC coordinator, the cook, all of the help at the house were inmates. You know, they're in the state penitentiary. We're not talking about people that have been, you know, a low-level offender. And so the warden would come down from time to time and review the files of the people that were going to work there. Bonnie always said, because of the two girls, our daughters were still quite young, nobody was sex offense, but she said the murderers were the best. The people And so when I would tell people at the at you know, the National Governors Conference, I said, you know, we have outstanding help. We've got people from the prison. You have what? No. And years later, so I would meet some of them after they'd been paroled, and you know, make sure that nobody around was embarrassed to know that our meeting occurred. You know,
Well, Senator, it has been an honor to visit with you.
The honor's
this
been
evening.
mine.
Thank you. This has
And
been
thank everybody,
so
Bill,
enlightening.
you and your company, and so many others, and Jim for the nice things you said, and obviously from Michael Green. I just have to say, there's a Latin expression, it means cum grano salis, with a grain of salt. A lot of what you've heard that I did, take with a grain of salt. Cum grano salis. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you for the tie.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, Rose, you're going to say a few words.
I am. A very few words because
Oh, Rose, okay.
it's very difficult to.
No, you'd always get the last word, yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad you remember that. Well, I am. Thank you very much. I am so delighted to say thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time to be here tonight. To those of you who've been kind enough to support the launch of our effort to celebrate the senator. Thank you, Mike and Jerry. There's so many people who are here who've been kind enough to provide their support. Bill, you know how much we appreciate the support from MGM. We have a wonderful working group, Senator, of your favorite people. And when Dr. Green came to me and asked for help thinking about the best way to celebrate your contributions and those of Bonnie, the only thing I could do was to reach out to my friends. And so I did Helen Foley. I did Tony Sanchez. I did Jody Chopra and Wanda Gisbert. I absolutely reached out to a group of folks who have been kind enough to come together fairly regularly to support this effort. So I don't want to miss anybody. I want to make sure that we recognize Kathy England. I want to make sure that we recognize the contributions of Heather Torgensen, who you should be in touch with if you're prepared to offer some additional support. Emily Irwin, who's been fantastic, and her team. My good friend Alyssa Naveworth, who was kind enough to have to whisper to a very dear friend of the Senators, who was kind enough to agree to be our honorary chair. And we are very grateful to you, Dr. Nave, for doing that. Brent Heberly is also a part of this effort. I want to thank the Lindsay Foundation. I want to thank, who else am I thanking? Lindsay, Brookings. Thank you. Brookings Mountain West for their support. Senator, you were kind enough to be responsible for two of my positions. One with the city of Las Vegas, where I began my work in economic diversification. And then secondly, you appointed me as the Chief Executive Officer of CSTAR, the Corporation for Solar Technology and Renewable Resources. So this is the person who actually began the process of helping me to spread sunshine in the state, and I'm very grateful to you for everything. I recall quite vividly a conversation that you and I had And I remember your comment, Rose, it's so important to learn the art of addition. The art of addition. The +1 is critical. Some years ago when I began my work in economic development, there was a very young person, Maria Gali, who was kind enough to support me in that effort. She said immediately yes to this effort and has been very, very helpful to us in coordinating this event and everything else. I have friends who just don't know how to say no, Marlene. And to each of you, thank you so much. So my job is this call of action, which says, if you can, reach out to someone who you know, who supports and wants to celebrate the contributions of this remarkable couple. We want to make sure that we continue on the path that we have started. The MGM contribution is significant. We've had other major contributions. We are a third of the way, surprisingly, to the goal that we've set, but we still need your help and your support. So please reach out to your friends and family and those who you know want to make sure that we recognize and continue to celebrate these contributions. I thank you again for coming tonight and wish you a pleasant evening. Thank you, everyone.
Well, and thanks to all of you for coming. I appreciate this. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.